welcome everybody. This is General Microsoft 365 Development Special Interest Group. It is the bi-weekly sync. It is July 9th, 2020, and we have again a pretty busy agenda today. So we're looking into having 3 different demos. We'll walk through some of the announcements and some of the new stuff, what's coming related on M365 development. Today we are more focused on Teams, maybe, but then obviously we'll talk about Power Automate as the last topic. So we'll kind of do a quick recap on the open source projects, so everybody's up to date on what's happening there. A lot of actually new stuff on those as well. I think we have some of the people in the room to talk about their slides as well, but let's see how it goes. Now, a quick recap on our assets and opportunities to participate with the community. If you're looking into having presentations, or you want to have exposure, or you want to be an MVP, or you want to be an MVP who gets renewed, easiest way to do that is to do presentations in this course, definitely. So it's a really great opportunity to get visibility for your company, and then obviously teaching everybody else something new. So please volunteer, reach out to me or somebody else in the BMP team, and we'll get you scheduled. You can always contribute in GitHub as well, which is a great option. So to our developer docs, not only on developer docs, community docs, developer samples, scripts, PowerShell, whatever. There's multiple different repos available and multiple different options. And the most important piece as the last item, please provide feedback. Please provide feedback. Is there something which you don't like what Microsoft does? We need to know about it. Something is missing. We need to know about it. I can't promise that we can tackle that ask immediately, but it's always better to share that with Microsoft than not to be aware of that, and Microsoft not to be aware of your input. And also positive feedback is also more than welcome, because that usually helps people to contribute even more. But I think this community goals are a good example. There's a lot of positive feedback already always in the chats. Now, a few assets, and just to make sure that everybody has access on the things, we have Microsoft 365 developer videos, official video story. We have the Microsoft 365 SharePoint Community, the BMP videos. We have some of the videos as well. We have open source, a lot of stuff available for you using typically MIT license, so you can basically use them as they are any way you want. We have sample galleries. The new sample gallery has been added on there. It's still in progress actually to be finalized, but it's working really nicely. Hugo and Bob German has been really working on the Teams samples gallery. Like I said, it's pretty early still. We'll get additional samples there available as it moves along. Whole point being on the fact that there's so many GitHub repos out there, and it's really difficult to find what's relevant for you. So having a nicely approachable gallery, sample gallery, you can more easily find what's relevant for you. And then if you're wondering on, oh, there's so many URLs, so many things to remember, again, as M365, the final piece in the slide, one URL to remember where you can get access on everything, the Microsoft Craft documentation, SDKs, Teams tooling, open source, all of that stuff, one location. Can find them. Now, during this week, we had quite a few big announcements on the Microsoft Teams side. You probably noticed that if you've been in social media. So the Microsoft Teams Toolkit extension for Visual Studio Code is now generally available. That was released day before yesterday, unless I'm completely mistaken. And it's basically an extension for Visual Studio Code. Now, this will not replace YoTeams. This is basically an additional set of tools which can be used together with YoTeams as well. So, for example, the validation or the editing of app package can be used with YoTeams as well. And there's an ongoing discussions on how do we merge those things together. If you're looking into doing development in TypeScript, then YoTeams is the way to do it. If you're looking into doing development for Teams using JavaScript, then this one is the tool to use. But then if you're looking into validating packages and pushing and publishing packages, you can use actually this tool for that as well, regardless what is the underlying technology what you're using, which is pretty cool. Now, the other announcement for Microsoft Teams was actually also done earlier this week, not today, is Microsoft Teams JavaScript SDK 1.7 is out. So there's a new APIs related on that one, mentioned on the docs as well, and improvements on the existing capabilities. So this is basically the Teams context. If you have your website exposed inside of the Microsoft Teams, then you can get access on the Microsoft Teams APIs and functionalities using this one. It works both for websites and individual single-page applications or SharePoint framework-based Microsoft Teams extensibility. Now, a few reminders on the things, on the contributions. So our Sharing is Caring initiative has its following sessions already queued up. If you don't know what this is, it's basically a guidance or initiative helping you to learn how to contribute and how to take advantage of the community. So basically, if you don't feel familiar enough on the GitHub and you want to learn how to use GitHub, or how do you update your forks, how to get started on using some of the samples or some of our samples or some of the whatever samples in GitHub. These are great training sessions led by David Warner and Hugo Bernier, where they go through how to get started on contributing. So really cool stuff. Now, a quick teaser also for next week. So we do have the SharePoint monthly community call coming up on next Tuesday, where we go through the latest on the user voice on the SharePoint extensibility. We cover up the contributors across the whole M365 PnP initiative. And then there's an interesting topic related on Microsoft 365 information barriers. Not really a dev topic as such, but it actually, you can ask questions around the API support on that as well. But it's really great sessions, and Sesha is a great presenter as well, related on how can you filter information not getting leaked between the teams or organizations inside of a company or inside of a tenant. So really cool stuff. Not explicitly for SharePoint, definitely not about SharePoint topics, but it's one of those things where we want to cover the latest on that capability. Now, a few updates on the open source project. PnP Core upcoming July release is happening on next Monday, Tuesday, roughly. There's improvements for modern page extraction. The web logging works for the regular and admin domain URLs, so you can more easily sign in. SharePoint 2019 support improvements because the site score is being used quite widely in on-premises. And for those who are only in cloud, you are super lucky. There's a lot of people who are using on-premises still, and we're getting a lot of feedback on that as well. A lot of fixes and various small improvements. Now, on H2, the future of H2 meaning from July until Christmas, and there's a lot of investments on the PnP Core SDK. So this is a new SDK, which is a graph first SDK. So it basically uses by default Microsoft Graph, but then in the context of SharePoint, if the graph is missing a property or a method, it will fall back automatically without you even knowing on the classic CSOM or REST API. So it's basically there to help you as well. So, but that's in a relatively early preview right now, but coming later this year. In general, the BMP CSOM Core is being used in 44,000 tenants. So the usage is growing quite heavily. So really cool stuff as well. Now on the BMP PowerShell side, Erwin, are you on a call? Erwin's
yep.
been...
Yes, I am. Yep. Right. So big announcement for us this week is that we're also going to do Teams, which will be. I just see this message there on the top that I didn't see when we were doing this slide, but we're going to do Teams.
Don't get confused. So,
no, I was
trying to send you a message with a co-authoring, but apparently you didn't remove it. So it's
I missed it. So. I missed it. Yeah. So we're doing Teams commandlets. So we have basically full coverage of the ones that you might be familiar with, the other Microsoft Teams commandlets. So we have basically all the same functionality, but we added a bit. So with the Teams commandlets from PnP PowerShell, you will be able to create tabs and remove tabs. So if you really dislike that wiki tab, you can take it away. And we also allow you to post messages to a channel with our commandlets. That's happening, and a lot of other things happened actually. Last month we merged quite some PRs. An important thing that I want to announce is that for the next month we're going to introduce a feature merge freeze, not because we're going on vacation, but because we're going to do some house cleaning in the repository. We're going to rename a lot of things and reorganize a lot of things. Getting ready for PowerShell v4. And if we, at the same time, get a ton of pull requests coming in, they will very likely immediately from the moment you submit the pull request conflict with the changes we're making. So that's why we're not going to merge anything the coming month. Just let you know that if you're eager to come up with some new functionality, you're totally welcome to, but just expect us not to merge it until August. That's happening. So after July, there will be a not an all new, all fresh PowerShell. You won't see much on the outside, but on the inside, it will be reorganized here and there. And we're also getting ready for some things for .NET Standards, which is PowerShell v4, which will run on .NET Standard. That's happening with PowerShell.
Yeah, just to reiterate on that one, the fact that it goes to PowerShell v4, it means that you can then run PnP PowerShell in Azure Functions. You can do easy automation with it, and then it supports multiple different scenarios, definitely. So it's certainly a great deal. Finally, we can actually do and move that transition there. Now, on the modernization tooling, Bert is not here. Not a massive amount of new capabilities in here. We can see a lot of people using the modernization tooling and also taking the code and using that outside of the existing code, which is great. And the modernization tooling itself helps classic SharePoint sites and pages and experiences to move automatically to the modern pages. So basically, you can do mapping of a classic page to a modern page and automate across the whole tenant, and really cool stuff, because there's no native capabilities of doing that, and we want you to use modern SharePoint. So don't use classic if possible, use modern. There may be a one or two small exceptions here and there why you would still be in the classic, but don't do that. Don't, please go to modern, much better. And then on the Yo Teams, Victor is not on the call. He's actually on well-deserved summer vacation. So the latest version is 2.15. June 2020 is by far the most widely used or widely downloaded, actually, Yo Teams. So the Yo Teams usage is growing rapidly. It's grown more than 200% from the start of the year. So people clearly like it, which is great. And there's a lot of additional improvements coming with the upcoming versions. So there's more than 4,500 generated projects over the past 90 days. So that's actually pretty cool. The thing, if you're looking into getting started on Yo Teams and you want to use the Teams development, and you want to use Yo Teams as the platform for it, which is in the Yeoman generator based TypeScript, and it generates you the stuff. We do have a training package for it, which is basically 8 videos, which are sized for 5 to 6 minutes. Getting started, how to create a bot framework thing, how to create a tab, how to create a personal application, and all of that. So that's available in the YouTube channel. But please give us feedback on what's needed on this one, and obviously everything is available in the GitHub to keep you up to date on what's happening. But that's it from the quick 15 minutes intro, which we're trying to keep you up to date on the projects, and we're heading down to the demo section. And I can see Kiran being super excited, can't wait to start actually presenting. So Kiran, I think we are ready to go to your screen and to your presentation on the demo side.
Thank you, Vesa. Super excited to be here, and thank you for joining and listening in. So I'll be talking about Microsoft Teams app templates, what they are, give you a little overview, talk about a few more things about the Microsoft platform, and I'll also take you to the catalog overview page and walk you through it. I'm Kiran Thomas. I'm a product manager at Teams, and yeah, let's jump right in. So the first thing I'd want to kind of go over is a little bit about the Microsoft Teams platform and why it's so important in thinking about how the platform works before we dive into app templates and go into details. So we're using Teams now. It's pretty obvious what the core scenarios are, but a lot of functionality that you already use are built using the extensibility of the platform. So when you want to engage with your users, you want to involve your services with where your users are collaborating and chatting. That's when you start thinking about using the Microsoft Teams platform. And what does that mean? You're probably already using a lot of the Microsoft applications there. They are like flagship uses of the platform that Microsoft has built. We have a lot of partner applications that have been built on the platform. My favorite one is Polly, that I used to take polls and things like that. So these are great examples of how the platform gets used really well. But that's when we can then move on to thinking about custom apps and how you can bring in your own scenarios from your own organizations and expand the options. So think of HR teams, sales teams, how they can collaborate better, how you can bring data so that they don't have to switch back between using Teams and other applications that they have to use every day. You can think of it by industry, whatever industry you're in, how can you make a particular process in your industry easier because using all the folks who are using Teams in there. And as you think about that, you come up with your ideas of what this, it might be an application that's already existing, or it might be a new application that you're trying to come up with. So there's a key set of interfaces that the Teams platform offers, and I'll quickly walk through each of them. Tabs are probably the most complex, but also the most powerful because they're in an open web interface that you can attach to your Teams. There's bots, which are great for like conversational situations where you want to have a one-on-one conversation between a service and a person or a group of people. There are adaptive cards, which are dynamic templatized content that can be presented to the user from your service, and it can dynamically update and take quick actions from the user. There are messaging extensions, which live within the context of when you compose a new message or when you're reading an existing message, you can bring your service in a small UI and do quick actions there. There are task modules, which are pop-ups that allow you to connect your service through a pre-existing schema. And finally, there's also notifications. This is where you can reach your users and bring your service to Teams users and get them to notify whenever something changes in your service. And when you combine this with any of the backend services that Microsoft offers, you can kind of mix and match and bring all this together into Teams. So you can kind of think of it when you put the interfaces and the backend between your app and service and Teams, you get the end-to-end scenario where all living within Teams. So this kind of architecture is already existing within the different apps in Teams, and just want to quickly go through a different way of thinking of each of the types of apps in Teams. So the obvious ones are, we have over 45 Microsoft-built apps. These are tightly integrated productivity tools, like the common ones like Word, Excel. So these are probably the most used ones by the folks in your organization. There are third-party apps, over 450 available in the stores. This is directly, you can install it from the store, ready to use. But then the crazy potential comes in when you think about building your own custom apps and adding them to Teams. And that's where there's a lot of options and a lot of possibilities. So there's you can build using the Power Platform. We have an integration with the Power Platform that allows you to use low code, no code. There's the app templates, which is what we're going to cover today. These are sample app Teams apps that are posted on GitHub that is available for anyone to pick up, learn, and use. And then you can also start from scratch. If you have an idea and you want to learn how to use each of these, you can also do that. But today we'll be focusing on the app templates. So diving a little deep into app templates, what are they? You can kind of think of them as plug-and-play experiences. They're sample Teams apps available on GitHub, ready to use. They work right out of the box with very little configuration required. They're meant for one-click deployment. So we include a script that allows you to deploy and create all the scripts to Azure. And they're built to meet the Teams engineering standards. So they've been ensured that they're secure and configurable, and you can also take them, customize them, extend however you'd like. And if you look at the graph on the right, I think it helps me understand really where the app template sits. So it's kind of in between using a ready-to-use app and starting from scratch in terms of customizability and how long it takes to get your solution deployed end-to-end. So what are the benefits? So the most important one is that it's ready to go. There's very little configuration or coding required. But the good part is that you can customize it. You can rename it, add your organization's branding, change the coloring, make it funky, whatever you can think of, and add additional features that might be important to you and your organization. And it's also, since it's built with the Teams platform engineering quality bar, it's ready to go out of the box, and you can deploy it with one click. And you can also think of it as sample code, like you can learn from it, play with it, even if you don't want the exact same thing. We offer many different types that connect to different interfaces, so you can play with it, learn, and contribute and improve the community too. Let's jump into a few different examples. I'll walk through three of our most popular app templates to give you an idea. And then we'll also walk through the catalog. So my favorite one is the company communicator. This is a very simple app in terms of what it does. It allows you to message all the different users within your Teams tenant. And the reason why it's so powerful is, especially when you have new users getting into Teams and you'd want to help them, point them to tips and tricks, you can compose a message and send it directly to all the users. You can even select it to specific teams, however you'd like. And this came out from direct customer feedback. We had a lot of customers asking for an ability to do this. And so that's why we decided to build a sample code base to do that. Another one of my favorite ones is called the FAQ Plus. This is a simple Q&A bot that also includes a human in the loop. So imagine if you're a person with a question about an HR policy, you can go to the bot, ask a question about it. But if it, in most cases, if it doesn't answer it, you kind of get stuck and you don't have any other place. You get frustrated because the bot's not doing the job well. But the FAQ Plus allows you to escalate it to an expert, chat one-on-one directly with them in Teams, and get the answer. And the expert has the option to add this new question that you asked into the knowledge base so that the next time someone asks it, the bot will be able to handle that. So it's very powerful. You can think of using it in HR, any kind of scenario where there's where you get commonly asked questions. It could be within your IT department, your legal department. There's lots of opportunities there. And then moving on, another fun one is called Icebreaker. This is a one-on-one bot that pairs up employees within your team or organization periodically, and you can configure how you want it to do that. It's especially important in these times when we're all working remote to remind us to meet up with people and have virtual coffee chats. You can, if you're too busy one day, you can also pause the matches, and from directly using the adaptive card, you can click on buttons and chat with that person before you schedule a meeting, or you can propose a meeting and it'll pull up the next open slot for both of you. So this is a super fun way to get your folks in your organization to meet up, and you can learn from how adaptive cards work, how these conversational bots work through this app template. So I've compiled a few of the questions that we commonly get asked about app templates. And the first one being, what's the level of security and privacy and all those things within the app templates? These are, like I mentioned earlier, built to be meets Teams engineering standards. So we make sure that out of the box that it is secure, and any improvements that we incorporate from the community gets vetted by our engineering team before it gets published. And the other common question is, what does it take to deploy these apps? They're meant to be, we include a single deployment script and full detailed instructions. So we'll walk through an example, but I'll show you how it goes step by step, how to create different resources in Azure, how to deploy the Teams app, how to get it all set up so that you can get it working. And can anyone deploy these apps? Yes, anyone who has the right permissions within your Teams tenant can deploy it. So depending on how restrictive your admin has set it up to be, it might be something that you can do without any changes, or you might have to reach out to your admin, but anyone with the right permissions can do it. And another common question we get asked is about the cost. This doesn't cost anything. It's open source. It can be customized. You can do whatever you want with it. But the only thing I can think of is the Azure resources that it uses. And to help estimate with that, we also have a cost estimate section in all of our app templates. Now, you might be wondering where you can learn more about it. So let's take a few minutes and jump into the entire catalog. So we'll quickly walk through one of the examples so that you get an idea of what the catalog looks like. So yeah, this is the whole catalog, the page that has all the different links to all the app templates that we've released on the right. And on the left, you can see a quick overview of what they are, pretty much what I talked about. And as you scroll through, you can see examples of them. There's the link to GitHub here, and we have screenshots of the key parts of the UI. And if you jump into Company Communicator, like we talked about, let's go in. And you can see here we have detailed instructions. We have a cool README in the documentation and the different sections that I talked about. Take a look at it. We have the deployment guide, which walks through how to do it step by step. Another popular one is the cost estimate, like I mentioned. It'll tell you exactly on an average scenario how much it'll cost every month based on the resources that the app template uses. Yeah, so that's a quick overview of it. A little sneak peek into what's coming up next. So I'll be me and my colleagues will be joining the future calls here and walking you through these app templates one by one, giving you a quick demo, showing how to use it. So hopefully that'll help, and I hope that you're as excited about app templates as I am. Yeah, that's me for today. Back to you, Vesa.
Thank you, Kiran. So really cool stuff. And like Kiran said, we already agreed that for the following bi-weekly calls, his team himself or then somebody else is going to do a real life 15 minutes live demos of all of the things. There's so many samples available. And at least for me, really the first time when I run into by an accident to app templates, I'm like, what are these? Why didn't I know about this? These are just absolutely brilliant because they basically demonstrate all of the needed capabilities for Microsoft Teams extensibility, and they're vetted by the Teams engineering. So the quality is actually there. So there's this awesome starting point. Just a quick question, Kiran, on the if we have partners on the call related on this. So are we basically saying that these are application templates which a partner can pull down and start building and extending them, and then they can actually package that and push to the store? Are they for that usage as well?
Yeah, great question, Vesa. Yeah, these are open source MIT licensed app templates, so they're completely free to use. You can pull them down, customize it, reuse them how you want, and get it published to your internal store or to the public store, however you'd like. And you can rebrand it, add features to it. If you find something that you want to contribute, feel free to contribute directly to the repo, or you can package it up however you like and use it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that's really amazing when I think about it. There's like more than 25 samples, which are really on the right quality level and showing how to make business out of within the Microsoft Teams. So really, please have a look on that, whoever is in the call or watching the recording later as well. But I think that's it from that topic. Thank you, Kiran. And then next we'll move into the bot framework. It's no-code bot framework, isn't it, Stephan?
Yeah, I actually changed the title to without writing actual code because there's a little bit of code in there, which you'll see. Yeah. Let's jump in. My name is Stephan. I'm a technical lead working at an Austrian-based company, Solvion, and I'm mainly responsible for all, I call it conversational AI parts within our company. Therefore, I'm an AI MVP dealing with the bot framework and things. If any one of you has questions, please feel free to contact me or use the bit.ly link down here where me, Tommy Görles, Rick van Rostelt, and Api Anshot have made some videos on that topic as well as other topics as well to get more into the details. So before we start into actual demos, I want to give you a quick overview of what the conversational AI platform is actually, because it's quite a tremendous platform Microsoft has built out there, starting with open source frameworks for actually building conversational apps, conversational AI apps with the bot framework. There are a lot of SDKs out there for C#, JavaScript, Python, and Java you can use to actually write codes and build bots. On top of that, they have what they call, or what we call, the managed bot service. So a bot hosting platform in Azure offers you the possibility to actually deploy your bot to the Azure resources and connect your bot to the various channels without actually managing the connections between those channels yourself. That's done by Microsoft, so you can actually build your bot, focus on the building part, development part, and then just pick and choose which channels should be offered within your bot solution. So on top of that, what you actually would need to build a really sophisticated bot are pre-trained AI services, meaning cognitive services offering you intelligence as a service. Could be in some kind of vision category like computer vision, image detection, or face recognition. Could be in terms of speech and language, meaning language understanding, speaker recognition, speech to text, and so on and so forth. And those are actually the services which make your bot intelligent, because a bot itself built with the bot framework is nothing more than a regular web app you built. And then if you're quite new to the topic, there are a lot of templates and solution accelerators out there, so you don't need to start from scratch. You can use the solution accelerators, you can download them on the GitHub pages, and you pretty much have a bot up and running within a couple of minutes, where you don't need to actually write code. Just look on behind the curtains how Microsoft builds sophisticated bots themselves. In terms of the bot framework itself, as we're speaking today of the bot framework composer, which is one part of the Microsoft bot framework. We have a lot of sample repos out there. There are a lot of CLI tools out there for doing automation and stuff. You got your own emulator you can use to actually build and debug bots locally. So without the need to actually building your bot and then deploying it first before you can test it, you can do that locally. And there are a lot of other controls out there for implementing web chat and stuff, or implementing it into SharePoint pages or what have you. Coming through the implementation side of things, you can build your bot actually once and then connect it to a wide range of channels, meaning you can connect it to Teams, you can connect it to email, you can connect it to SMS, meaning text messaging bot, but you can also make use of the third-party channels like Facebook Messenger, like Slack, and so on and so forth. And the cool thing here is really you build the bot once and then deploy it to whichever channel you want to have it deployed to, without actually needing to build multiple bots for the multiple channels. Of course, here and there are differences in the channels. Some support, let's say, adaptive cards, while some don't. Some support speech, while some don't, and so on and so forth, which you need to think about before you actually connect it to the various channels. But in general, you could say you build the stuff once, you develop it once, and then you can run it almost everywhere. And for the topic of today, the Microsoft Bot Framework Composer, this is quite a new tool you can make use of to build a bot. And as you can see on the slide here, it's basically a graphical user interface for building a bot. So you don't need to actually write the code yourself. You just use the composer to actually build the bot, to design the dialogues, design the bot's behavior without the need of writing code, because composer in the backend writes the code for you. And so this is pretty much a tool not only built for developers, but also built for, let's say, power users or business users, to actually get the bot building or bot development phase much quicker and easier, of course, where you can actually start in Composer and then hand it off to, let's say, the development team to make some more or sophisticated actions in there, or tweak the bot here and there, which you can't do with Composer out of the box. So the whole bot development lifecycle gets much more easier with the introduction of Composer. And Composer mainly consists of various pieces. Of course, first of all, the visual editor, where you can just design the bot's behavior, you can design dialogues and stuff like that. But also what you get with Composer is the ability to handle all the things happening around your bot right within that tool as well. So you can manage your language understanding models right within Composer. You don't need to actually switch to another portal, which in the past was the LUIS portal, to actually scaffold your, let's say, language understanding model, and then go back to Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio to implement it into your bot. You can do it right within Composer. The same is true for the opposite, meaning language generation. This is quite a new topic in the bot side of things, where you can actually make use of much more sophisticated, let's say, dialogue concepts, where you could implement language generation models to make the bot more, or make the bot behave more personal. For instance, if someone greets the bot should greet back, but depending on the time of the day, the bot will greet either with good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, to make the whole conversation much more personal and much more user-friendly in a way, instead of just saying hi each and every time the user greets the bot at a very simple scenario. And all of those concepts are basically wrapped up in what's called adaptive dialogues. So meaning, in the past, you would need to write your dialogues using either C# or JavaScript or TypeScript or whatever. And nowadays, with the adaptive dialogues concept, you just write JSON. So dialogues are nothing more than JSON representatives, which include all of that stuff, meaning language understanding parts, the language generation parts, and the triggers and actions you will have in your dialogues. And that makes it much more flexible. So you could basically go ahead, use the composer to just model out your dialogues, and then hand them over to the developers for implementing them. No matter if they're using C# today and tomorrow they're writing a JavaScript bot, they can actually make use of the adaptive dialogues in either case. So the whole bot framework and bot development kind of architecture is more holistic in that approach. But enough for slides. Let's jump into a demo. What I have here is the bot framework composer. As I have my slideshow still on, you can't see it, but it's basically an Electron app you can install on your machine. You can get it from the GitHub repo, or if you want to, you can also download the source and build the composer tool by yourself if you want to tweak it, if you want to customize it, or if you want to extend it. And within here, kind of oriented to what Power Virtual Agent does, and kind of bit of the Power Automate UI, where you can actually make use of that visual editor to design your bot's behavior. So if you want to build a new bot, of course, you can start from scratch. If you know what you're doing, you can basically get your empty bot up and running and scaffold the whole dialogues by yourself. But the cool thing here is you have a lot of working samples in here, which you can use to actually see what's possible with the composer tool, what you can do with it, and what you can't do with it, to get a, let's say, starting point to take it further down the road. So what I actually wanna demo today is a simple bot capable of answering questions which are stored in a Q&A maker knowledge base, as well as implementing some language understanding parts within it. So I'll go ahead with the Q&A maker and Lewis template, and I'll give it a name. I hope I don't have Chuck Norris already in my composer folder. And there you go. Right now, what you get is basically working bot with some triggers implemented. So on the left-hand side, you have your dialogues, and within the dialogues, you have your triggers. Triggers means each and every time the bot detects a language understanding intent, it will trigger that specific part within the dialogue. Meaning, if a user enters the conversation, there's a conversation update activity happening, telling the bot, hey, someone has entered the conversation, a member was added to the conversation, and you would need to do the following: greet the user, send a response, welcome, you can type help to learn more. There's another trigger for help out of the box. So if a user types in help, or I need help, or please help, those kind of intents are basically stored within your language understanding model. And each and every time the language understanding model detects the help intent, the bot will actually send a response to help the user get going within the conversation. And within the Q&A maker and Lewis sample, if the intent is unknown, meaning neither the help intent has been triggered or the by surface help intent has been triggered, it will look up the message from the user in the Q&A maker knowledge base, see if an answer can be found in there or not. And if so, the answer will be sent back to the user, and if not, a no match message will be sent back to the user. So if I'm now gonna go ahead and just update the app settings, or the what's called in the bot framework the bot settings, I need to propose my at least Q&A maker knowledge base ID, so the bot will actually know where to look up the questions if the intent has not been detected. So I'll go ahead and insert my knowledge base details in there. And then if I'm gonna go ahead and just click Start Bot, the composer will prompt me to implement my LUIS primary key so it can build up the language understanding model for me. And after some seconds, the bot will be ready to use. So in the background, it will spin up the .NET Core application for me. And if the bot has been up and running, I can immediately test the bot right within or right from my Composer tool. Now I have the Test and Emulator button up here. So what it actually will do is it will bring up the bot framework emulator I mentioned earlier, where I can test and debug my bot locally. So if I'm now gonna go ahead and open the emulator, it will greet me. And now I can do things like, I don't know what's in my knowledge base, but I'm pretty sure there's something about the bot framework in there. I can go ahead and ask the bot, and the bot will look up the question in my knowledge base. Not yet, because unfortunately this seems to be the help intent triggered. So in here I can see help intent was triggered, and it will bring back the answer from my help trigger. But that's not sophisticated at all. But what we can do in here is define a new trigger. And I want to define a new trigger for, let's say, I want the bot to tell me a joke. So I have my trigger phrases in here: tell me a joke, are you funny, do you know a joke, please tell a joke, and so on and so forth. This goes right into my language understanding model. And what I can do right here is I can alter the bot's behavior or the dialogue's behavior. So I can send a response. If I want to hard code a joke, I can ask back a question saying I want to have a text input, number input, confirmation, whatever, what have you. But what I can also do is send an HTTP request right from within here. So there's this very cool Chuck Norris API, which I can query, and I can store the result in a variable. So pretty easy. HTTP request get, just insert the URL in there and just tell the dialog which property to fill at the end of the day. And then I can just, at a very simple stage, I can send the response I get right from within here. So I can refer to dialog.joke response is the actual response I'm getting from the API, and the value is within content.value. If I restart the bot now, and now it's building up the language understanding model again, because I've added a new intent in there and I've added a new trigger in there. But if it's done building and publishing, I can restart my conversation and say, tell me a joke, for instance. And right now it should hit the Chuck Norris API and give me back a joke. And within here we see it hits the API and we get back a joke. And therefore we see actually those are basically the most basic scenarios you can do within bots. But there you also see you don't need to actually be a developer to start building a bot. Of course, if there are some let's say really complex dialogues and stuff like that, and you're you're dealing with, let's say, conditions or loops, you have to have that development knowledge, of course, but you don't need to have the knowledge of writing actual code. You don't need to be a C# or JavaScript developer anymore to build a bot. If you know the basics and the principles, you can go ahead with Composer and just start building your bot right within there. That's it. Time's up.
Excellent, excellent, really cool stuff, Stephan, as an introduction on this, and then we could definitely potentially schedule a new one for the later in the autumn to go slightly more detailed on settings. But this is a great intro on getting started, and there was a lot of people kind of like, oh, they were not aware of the whole thing exists. So really, really cool stuff. Absolutely.
Thanks.
So it's always the thing, we're shipping so many things across to Microsoft nowadays in Azure and M365 side, so it's really hard to stay up to date on what's happening. So. But from a timing perspective, John, let's jump on your screen.
Hello. It's a very short demo, so I'm just going to run through it. I really like this background, but it probably makes it really hard to read. This demo is about calling a special API endpoint called execute site script action. And I'm going to call it from Microsoft Flow, which is now called Power Automate, because I think you could do everything in Microsoft Flow. What we can do, there is a link, actually. So yeah, I'll just run through it. So the site script action let us access what's in the modern SharePoint site script, which is part of the SharePoint site design. You can use it to create a custom list. This is with custom columns. You can use it to create content types. You can add the content type to your custom list. You can apply branding, change logo. You can actually also activate features. So if you know the feature GUID and you can activate that on the site, you can use it to trigger a flow. But I would put a question mark here because we're already in a flow executing a site script. Why do we want to execute another flow? That seems like, that's like, okay, maybe not that one. But also you can use it to configure regional settings for your site and use it to add user principals to SharePoint groups. So a bunch of super powerful, and these are things that, we could use the REST API to do. It's just to do it in the REST API, you have to make multiple calls. You have to call a list and then call another endpoint to check if the column's there, then create that column and then do another, like it just goes on and on. Let me show you that link. So that is the link that's here, the site script, site design JSON schema, which has all the actions. The top one is creating a SharePoint list. You can use any of the enums that you've memorized. So there is the top level site action, create SP list. You can give a list name, and then you can create all these sub actions where you can add little verbs like set the description, change the title, and add SP field. That's a sub action. So there's a whole bunch of them. And then you can apply theme and so on. Now, you might say, hey, wait, this is not new, is it? Well, the site script action here and with a set of sub actions, these are part of the site script and which is part of the site design. And traditionally, to apply it to a site, you need to write the site script, add the site script to SharePoint, then add the site script to site design, and then apply the whole site design to a site. So there's like several steps. What execute site script action does, this action, is it lets us shortcut this whole thing and just run this. So you could basically create a site script, call this endpoint, give it this JSON, which we all learn is just text with squiggly brackets. And it will execute the site script actions without you having to create a whole site script and then register in the site design and then apply it once and then throw the whole thing away. Seems very wasteful. So if you want to just create some sort of custom list, you could build a JSON running and then just call the endpoint, get your list back, and then keep going. So I want to show a few places where the site script is available. The PnP JS, and I think Patrick was in the call. PnP JS has an endpoint for execute site script action. So you can use it in here. In fact, that is the site script. So if you're coming from JavaScript, if you're using SharePoint framework, so SPFX, and you want to just call some site script, you could do this totally, completely allowed inside. Well, you can do it. Yeah, it's inside the library. So PnP is supported. Let me pop over to my demo real quick. So, so here's my flow. And this is a flow with a bunch of, I made it really big. So it's a button flow. I'm just going to run it to trigger it manually. Firstly, I need a SharePoint site collection URL. So let me just call it PnP1. And just to show you it's not magic, this site doesn't exist. It's a 404 file not found. Then before I call the site script, I'm actually going to call this SP Site Manager. So this is yet another endpoint. But this basically allows me to use that URL, use a web template, give it the owner, I'm the owner. And this is going to help me create a site collection. And you could call this from any site. So this action is the send HTTP to SharePoint action, which is a standard flow action. In fact, this entire flow is standard license. You do not need premium license to call any of this. So that's that one. That's the first one. That's all in my blog. So if you're curious about these little bits. So that's that first bit. The second bit, there is a few more actions. Firstly, we use a compose action to build, again, a JSON, which is text with squiggly things. We're using the create SP list verb. We're going to call a custom tracking with the underscore because we don't want spaces in our names. But right afterwards, we want to call the set title and change it so it doesn't have a space. We're going to do description, add field, and another field. Add complex field like a choice column, which requires some XML. We could do that. And also, you can decide if you want the field to be undo. If you want to add the field to the default field and whether you want it to be required. So this whole thing is the site script action. And you can actually have multiple. I just have one action here. And then, oops, next thing. Click too quick. To call this endpoint, we need the whole site script encoded as a string. So in JavaScript, it means to take the JSON and stringify it, right? So you turn the JSON of this script definition into just a encoded string. In Flow, we use a function called string brackets with the JSON that will turn that to a stringified string. And then we put that inside a new JSON which has this action definition. Then we're going to call execute site script action again. Now this time on the new site that I just created. So this is using a custom site, custom value, which is the URL from earlier. It's a post, calls execute site script action. This is the not so secret endpoint. It's anyway, it's out there. And then just pass this thing. Okay, so let me run this whole thing. So the flow is running. And you see the flow actually runs quicker than me waiting on that dialog to come up. So it took us 3 seconds to create the site. It then took about a second to apply the custom list. So if I come over here and just F5, you see that site is created. If I pop into the site content, you will see the content type. So the custom list is here with the underscore in the title, the custom columns, a whole bunch of little, all the fun stuff that you expect. So super powerful, I think, in my mind. Lots of scenarios to think about. And also, actually, let me show you one more bit. So there's one more action I didn't show. There is another endpoint on the same that area, it's under the site script utility. There is a get site script from web. You can call that and give it the web URL. You need to specify if you want a list definition. But what that will give us back is the script. So SharePoint is able to look at a current site and give us back the site script for it. And then we can turn that stringified JSON back into the site script. So you'll see this is the script that that SharePoint is able to create. So it's kind of two-way. You can use it to read an existing site and then pull out its site definition and then use it to clone it to a new site, or you could predefine your script and then just use that in Flow to create. So you can see this is the site script that's pulled out. It didn't do the underscore properly, so that's, if you run that, it's gonna create a list with the space in it, and you're gonna hate that list. Anyway, so yeah, lots of ideas. So you can maybe build a SharePoint list template libraries using a bunch of JSON files. So if your users say, hey, I need this type of list, you can click. We were talking about the Fabulous 40 in the chat comments. Yeah, you could totally have 40 list templates. These list templates, this JSON list can include a view. So you can customize your view and make it really fancy. So all the modern SharePoint list view customization can be embedded in your site design. So really powerful. You could create these lists that have very custom views. It should work really well with the upcoming Microsoft Lists, which is all SharePoint list based. So I could imagine the out of the box, about 10 templates that you can pick. They are pretty much essentially, in my head, they are pretty much essentially site design scripts that are run. You can use it if you have a Power App that needs certain type of SharePoint lists as a backing. You can use this to deploy it with a flow that checks if the list doesn't exist, then create it, and then have your Power Apps run. The other concern, this is me, my background is a consultant, and often I go to a new customer and they don't have access to Azure, and they want some sort of site provisioning. With Flow and no Azure required, no premium license required, you could be super productive with just these pieces. You could build a SharePoint framework webpack and call that from JavaScript, or you can use Flow as well. So you can right now use it from PnP.js and Flow. Maybe you could call it from PowerShell or CLI, maybe. I think others are in the core, they would be interested. But always good to see new endpoints, and then they encapsulate a lot of functionality. And the whole list is created on the server, so you don't need to worry about this back and forth of calling multiple API endpoints. You just call one endpoint, and then it creates the whole list. So that's super powerful. That's all my talk is about.
Awesome.
Cool.
Really cool stuff. Thank you, John. Always appreciate a mention of PnP.js in any demo. So great to see that. But no, really exciting stuff from everybody. So John showing some great stuff about site scripts in Power Automate. Stephan in the bot framework stuff. And then Kiran with the Teams app templates. Really great stuff from all the demos. Thank you all very, very much. Everybody have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. See you next Thursday for the JavaScript Special Interest Group. And everybody have a great week till then. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.